I paid $9,500 toward my family's 40th anniversary bash. Private chef, lights, open bar. Then my aunt slipped, "Your name's not on the final guest list. It's a vibe thing." My mom said, "You'll get it one day." So I called the bank, flagged every transaction, froze the event account, and voided the liquor permit. On the big day, the chef never showed. The lights didn't turn on. My dad called me 14 times. When I picked up, I said, if I had to pinpoint the moment everything snapped, it would be somewhere between my aunt saying it's a vibe thing and my mom's cryptic, "You'll get it one day." That was the exact second the wires in my brain crossed and I stopped giving a damn. This all started because I wanted to do something good. That was the original plan, something nice. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary was coming up and I figured for once I'd step up and do something meaningful. No more low-effort BBQs where everyone brings lukewarm pasta salad and we sit around folding tables in April's uneven backyard. This time it would be real, a proper event, something they'd remember. I pitched the idea to my parents over dinner. They nodded, a little surprised I was volunteering. My dad mumbled something like, "You sure you can handle that?" And my mom told me not to stress if it didn't come together. Jenna just said, "Cool. Let me know if you need help." Which in Jenna speak meant absolutely nothing. She never helped with anything unless it was about her. But I went ahead with it. I booked a private chef who specialized in French-American fusion. I locked in a jazz trio, rented lights, tables, linens, and a bar setup. I paid deposits, wired vendors, and double-confirmed every detail because I knew no one else would. $9,500. That's what I was out by the time I looked at my credit card statement one night. And no one had offered to split anything. Not even my sister, who I later found out was helping Aunt Rose design the vibe board for the event. Apparently, there was a whole theme, golden summer nostalgia, which I didn't even know about. That's when it started to feel off, like I was doing all the heavy lifting, but they were steering the ship without me. 2 weeks before the event, I stopped by my parents' place to drop off some documents for the venue. My Aunt Rose was there sitting at the kitchen island with Jenna, sipping from some drink and flipping through printouts. I asked what they were working on and Rose casually said, "Finalizing the guest list." I froze and asked what she meant. Just making sure it fits the vibe. It's a curated experience. Then she laughed. "It's nothing personal." I scrolled down the list. My name wasn't on it. I asked if it was a mistake. She didn't answer. Jenna looked at her and then said, "Roger, it's not like that. It's just we're trying to keep the energy consistent. You're not mad, are you?" I walked out without saying anything. I drove around for an hour just trying to make sense of it. I was planning this entire event. Every contract, every deposit, every detail was under my name and they were excluding me on purpose like I didn't belong. Later that night, I called my mom. I didn't even ask questions. I just said I saw the list. She took a deep breath and said, "Rog, sometimes you push too hard to be part of something that isn't for you. You'll get it one day." That line, that's what stuck with me. The next morning, I called the bank. I flagged every event-related transaction as unauthorized and started a dispute. I froze the event account. I called the chef and explained the situation. He agreed to cancel and return the deposit since it was a personal occasion. Same with the lighting crew. Same with the jazz trio, the liquor permit. I made a call to the county office and voided it. They hadn't even paid the remaining fees yet. I made sure nothing was left standing. On the big day, I stayed home, made pancakes, played music, took a nap. Around noon, the text started. Then the calls. Jenna messaged, "Where's the food? Marcus, why is the bar shut down?" Then my dad 14 missed calls in 2 hours. I finally picked up. He asked what was going on, why nothing was set up, why the chef never came, why they couldn't serve alcohol. I could hear the panic in his voice, like he was still trying to believe it was some kind of mistake. I told him, "Guess I'm just not part of the vibe." Then I ended the call and that's when everything began to change. The fallout started slow. Nobody wanted to admit what had happened. For the first few days I heard nothing, just silence. Like they were all too stunned to figure out who to blame. Then the messages started trickling in. My sister Jenna sent a long paragraph that started with A and ended with "We didn't think you'd take it that personally." I didn't respond. Aunt Rose posted a cryptic quote on Facebook about holding on to bitterness. My mom left me a voicemail that said she missed me and that things got out of hand. Dad never called again. I figured that was it. Lesson delivered. Point made. I thought maybe they'd reflect, maybe even apologize. That's not what happened. Instead, they went quiet again. Not the kind of quiet that comes from guilt. It was more like strategic silence, like they were waiting me out, like I was the one who had to crawl back. That's when I realized they didn't think they'd done anything wrong. So I started making some changes. First thing I did was stop covering Jenna's mortgage. She had me on the hook for the last 6 months because she was between jobs and things were tight. I never made a big deal out of it. I just sent money to her account every month and she said thanks with that usual air of entitlement. But this time I just stopped. 2 weeks passed before she noticed. She called, didn't even ask how I was. Just said her payment bounced and she was confused. I told her it wasn't my problem anymore. She got quiet and then hung up. Then came my dad's hospital bills. He's been on a bunch of prescriptions since his bypass last year, and I'd been helping cover the out-of-pocket costs. Again, never a thank you. It was just expected, like I owed it to them. But the thing is, they made it clear I wasn't really family. Not in the way that counted. So I pulled back there too. I didn't say anything, just let the bills arrive like usual, but this time unpaid. A month later, I got a group text from my mom. Hey family. We're going through a rough patch financially. If anyone can help out with Dad's medications this month, please reach out. Even $50 helps. I didn't answer. Then something happened that really pushed me over the edge. One afternoon, I stopped by their house to grab some things from the garage. I used to store a few old boxes there, photo albums, tools, the kind of stuff you don't need in an apartment. But what I really came for was my car. My first car, a '94 Celica I'd rebuilt with my friend Brian in college. I kept it in their garage because I didn't have space where I lived. It was gone. I stood in the garage staring at the empty spot for a full minute before I even called my dad. He picked up and sounded casual like nothing had happened. I asked him where my car was. There was a pause. He said, "We sold it. You hadn't used it in years. Figured it was just collecting dust." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just stood there in silence, my phone still in my hand, trying to wrap my head around the fact that they'd sold the one thing I told them explicitly to keep safe. A car that meant something to me. Not money-wise, but memory-wise. It was mine. That was the moment I decided I was done. No more calls. No more support. No more playing the role of the forgotten son who still bends over backwards for people who mock him behind his back. Because they did. I'd heard the things my cousins said when they thought I wasn't listening about how uptight I was. How I always tried to insert myself into things. It was always clear they didn't see me as one of them. I just refused to see it until now. From that day on, I went cold. By the 3rd month, it wasn't just distance. It was an eraser. My name disappeared from the group chats. The old family thread on Facebook got quieter. I found out they made a new one without me when my cousin Devin accidentally sent me a screenshot meant for someone else. I wasn't even angry anymore, just numb. I was out of sight and officially out of their version of the family. And still, the only person who seemed to notice was my grandmother, who called now and then to ask why I didn't come around. I never told her what happened. Didn't want to dump that on her. She just said the house felt different these days. Around that time, Jenna lost her job again. And just like before, she reached out not to catch up, not to ask how I was, but because she needed money. She'd missed rent. Her car needed repairs. Her words were carefully chosen. Not exactly an apology, but full of forced nostalgia. She sent a photo of us as kids, said she missed those days, then added, "I know things have been weird, but I could really use some help right now. Just until next month." I read the message twice. Thought about how she'd laughed when Rose said I wasn't part of the vibe. Thought about all the times I bailed her out and she barely said thanks. I didn't respond. She tried again the next day. This time, she added, "Please, Roger. You've always been the one who keeps things together." I left that one on read, too. A few days later, I got a call from my cousin Marcus. I didn't pick up. Then another from my mom. Then a text from my dad, which was the most unexpected. You're being cruel, Roger. This isn't how family treats family. I stared at that one for a long time. The nerve. After everything they'd done, I was the one being cruel. I didn't reply, but I did go and check the title on the Celica just to confirm. Sure enough, they'd sold it to some guy 2 towns over. Used my dad's name to transfer ownership. I could have pressed charges. I almost did, but I knew that wasn't the kind of one I wanted. I wasn't interested in courts or police. I wanted them to sit in the discomfort they created to understand slowly and fully what it felt like to be left out, devalued, erased. Meanwhile, things weren't going so well for them. Jenna posted in one of those local Facebook groups looking for a roommate. She got roasted in the comments. Apparently, she tried to raise the rent for someone already living there. My dad ended up back in the hospital briefly for blood pressure issues, and the GoFundMe started barely cracked $300. She posted about it 3 times, but most of the family just liked it without contributing. Nobody steps up when the person who used to hold everything together disappears. And I wasn't stepping up anymore. I kept working, kept saving, started looking at a new apartment, one with a garage this time. I wanted space, my own space, not just physically but emotionally, mentally, somewhere I could fully shut the door on everything behind me. Then one night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered without thinking. It was Aunt Rose. She said, "We've been talking as a family. We want to move past this, but we need you to understand you've hurt people." I said nothing. She kept going, trying to paint this picture of how I'd overreacted. That I'd let one misunderstanding snowball into something toxic. That I was too sensitive, too sensitive. That one landed like a punch. I hung up mid-sentence. I realized then this wasn't just a phase. This wasn't a fight waiting to be resolved. This was a full break. And I was okay with that. The rope had been fraying for years. They just didn't realize I'd finally let go. It had been almost 6 months since the anniversary disaster. At this point, I figured they just let things die out. No more texts, no more calls. Even Jenna stopped begging for help once she realized the well had run dry. I wasn't being cold for the sake of it. I just finally accepted that nothing I ever did for them was going to earn me a seat at the table. But then something strange happened. One Saturday afternoon, I got a letter, not an email, a real stamped handwritten envelope. My first thought was that it was from my grandmother, but the handwriting wasn't hers. It was from my cousin Devin. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He said he wanted to meet in person. Said he had something to tell me, but didn't want to put it in writing. That he felt guilty, that there was more to what happened with the car. At first, I thought it was some elaborate trap to guilt me into forgiving everyone, but something about the letter felt off, like he was scared. I called him and he picked up on the first ring. His voice was shaky. He said we had to meet somewhere quiet, so we picked a diner off the highway. He didn't even order food. Just sat down and said it. It wasn't your dad who sold the Celica. That stopped me cold. It was Jenna. He told me she was the one who listed it. Used my dad's info. Apparently, she'd found someone online who wanted a quick buy, and she took the cash, $3 grand, and used it to pay off a loan she'd been hiding from everyone. My dad only found out later, but took the fall to protect her. He didn't even want to lie. But your mom told him it was better to just say it was his decision, otherwise it would blow up the whole family. I didn't speak. Devin kept rambling, probably expecting me to yell, but all I felt was a cold sort of confirmation. Of course, it was Jenna. Of course, she took something that wasn't hers and expected no consequences. And of course, my parents covered for her like they always did. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what he said next. They're planning something. I asked what he meant. He said he overheard a call between Ed Rose and my mom. They were trying to convince my grandmother to change her will. Apparently, she had left a small property, a lake cabin in my name years ago. It wasn't much, but it meant something. She used to take me there when I was a kid. Said it was my place to escape. My name was still on the documents. They were trying to transfer it. Quietly, that snapped something inside me. I stood up, left cash on the table, and drove straight to the county records office on Monday. Sure enough, there had been an inquiry into the deed the week prior. Someone pretending to be me. They had actually tried to forge the paperwork. Took me 2 weeks and a lawyer to lock everything down, but I did. I had to send in proof of identity, file an alert, even set up a password-protected access on anything related to the property. I didn't tell them I knew. I wanted them to find out later when it was too late. That's when I knew this wasn't just dysfunction. It was theft. It was manipulation. It was malicious. They hadn't just left me out of a party. They had tried to erase me from the family entirely and take anything valuable I had with me. I didn't get angry. I got colder. I updated all my accounts, changed my number, set up a new trust. I even moved into a new place with a private garage. No one got the address. And then I waited. Because the more you take from people like that, the more desperate they get. And desperate people always come crawling back. Came sooner than I thought. I was at work sitting through a finance meeting I barely cared about when an old number flashed on my phone. Jenna. I let it ring out. She called again an hour later, then texted. Hey, I know things are weird, but can we talk? It's important. Please. I ignored it. By that evening, there were 5 missed calls, all from her. Then my mom called, then my dad. Nobody had called me this much in the past 6 months combined. Something was up. The next morning, I got a knock on my door. It was Jenna in person. I didn't even know how she found my address. She looked rough, makeup smudged, eyes red, like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. Just started talking right there on the doorstep. She said she needed help, that her car had been repossessed. She was 3 months behind on rent. And this was the kicker. She was being sued for fraud over a bounce check she wrote under our dad's name. I said nothing. She kept going. It's just one more favor, R.A. Just this once. Please, I'll pay you back. I swear. She wasn't crying, but she wanted me to think she was close. I asked if she remembered selling my car. She froze. It wasn't like that. I didn't think you even cared about it anymore. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. I told her I knew everything. Devin, the forged inquiry about the cabin, all of it. She just stared at me, stunned, like a kid caught stealing from a candy store. Then she said the wildest thing I've ever heard her say. But you're still family. You're supposed to help us. That word again. The people who laughed when I was excluded. The people who sold my car, tried to take the cabin, blamed me for everything and still thought I owed them something because I was technically their blood. I didn't yell. I didn't get dramatic. I just told her it wasn't happening. No more favors. No more saving her from her own mess. She begged. Then she got mad, called me selfish, said I was letting my parents down. I didn't argue. I didn't even stay outside. I just walked back in and closed the door in her face. A few days later, I got a message from my dad. He said they'd been talking and wanted to clear the air, that the family had been through a lot lately and maybe we could all sit down. I didn't answer. Then the final straw hit. My grandmother passed away. It wasn't unexpected. She'd been in declining health. What shocked me was how I found out. A Facebook post, not a call, not a message, just a public post from Jenna. They didn't invite me to the funeral, not even a mention. That told me everything I needed to know. I hadn't walked away from them. They never really let me in to begin with. But I wasn't sad. Not in the way they expected. I was calm, detached. Because when you stop chasing people who've already closed the door, you realize the silence is more peaceful than the noise ever was. The funeral came and went. I watched it unfold through photos other people posted. Saw the fake tears, the filtered eulogies, the same cousins who never visited my grandmother suddenly holding flowers like they were extras in a TV drama. My name wasn't mentioned in any posts, not even a tag. Like I was never her grandson. Like I didn't sit with her every summer when I was a kid, learning how to fix things around that old lake cabin they all pretended to forget existed until they thought they could steal it. 3 weeks later, the apology finally came, sort of. It was a group video call. Jenna initiated it. She must have convinced my parents it was time to heal. I didn't answer at first, but they tried again the next night, and something in me said, "Pick up." I clicked. Except, the screen filled with familiar faces I hadn't seen in months. My mom, my dad, Jenna, even Aunt Rose was there, arms folded like she was the judge of some low-budget courtroom show. There was this awkward silence at first, and then my dad spoke. He said they wanted to put things behind us, that they missed having me around, that things spiraled and maybe they hadn't handled it well. He said he hoped I could be the bigger person. Then Jenna chimed in, said she was sorry if I felt excluded. Not that I was excluded, just if I felt that way. She said everyone made mistakes and that we all had to take accountability. Then she asked the question, "So, are you going to say sorry, too?" I just stared at the screen. My mom stepped in, said she knew I was hurt, but that family meant forgiving. That she forgave me for how I'd acted and hoped I could do the same. I asked if they were sorry for trying to take the cabin. Nobody spoke. I asked if they were sorry for selling my car, for cutting me out of the anniversary, for mocking me, for treating me like an outsider for years while still expecting me to fund their lives. More silence. Then Ed Rose said, "This isn't about the past. It's about moving forward." That's when I realized none of them were actually sorry. They were just tired. Tired of losing access to me. Tired of scrambling for money I used to hand out without question. Tired of living with the consequences of their own arrogance. I smiled and I said, No, I wasn't going to say sorry. No, I wasn't going to pretend like things could go back to normal. No, I wasn't going to be part of a family that only knew how to take. My dad asked if that meant I was cutting them off for good. I said I already had. Then I ended the call. That was the last time I ever heard from them. There was no big blow-up, no dramatic fallout, just quiet, a silence that grew over time until it became permanent. They probably still tell their version of the story to anyone who will listen. That I turned my back. That I let money come between us. That I was ungrateful. But I know the truth. I didn't destroy the family. I just stopped pretending it existed. It's been a year now. A full year since I spoke to any of them. No calls. No messages, no surprises, at least until last week. I finally made the trip out to the cabin. Hadn't been there since my grandmother passed. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe dust, maybe silence. What I didn't expect was what I found tucked beneath a loose floorboard in the bedroom closet. A letter in my grandmother's handwriting, dated 5 years ago. She wrote that she knew the family would try to take the cabin, that they always circled like vultures when they thought something valuable was involved. She said she left it to me because I never asked her for anything. Because I visited, because I listened, because I never made her feel like a burden. She ended it with, "If they ever turn on you, come here. Remember, this place was always yours." I sat on the floor and read that letter 3 times. It felt like she was right there next to me again, making tea in the kitchen, humming a tune I never recognized. So yeah, maybe they did their best to push me out. Maybe they lied, stole, and turned their backs. But they didn't win. They don't know peace like this. They don't know what it's like to finally live without walking on eggshells. To wake up and not dread a phone call asking for money disguised as affection. To know exactly who you are without needing anyone's approval to feel valid. Some people are born into a family, others build their own. And I've started doing that now with friends who show up, coworkers who actually care, neighbors who remember your name. The chapter with my family, it's closed. And honestly, it's the happiest ending I could have asked for.